us right now, we have Representatives Charlie Dent and Representative Dan Kildee. Charlie Dent, a Republican from Pennsylvania, Dan Kildee, Democrat from Michigan. They're both joining us on Capitol Hill. Guys, it's nice to see you standing next to each other. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration across the country that we're hearing at some of these marches right now about how Congress is not working together to get things done. A recent poll shows Americans have just 18% approval of Congress, with 76% who disapprove. What do you say to these voters who are just pulling their hair out right now over the idea that the left and the right can't come together? Representative Kildee, we'll start with you.
Well, I think they're right to be frustrated, and I think the struggle is, and I know Charlie and I often feel the same way on this subject, that it ought not just be the left and the right that have to come together. There's a center. There's a functional majority in Congress that is not comprised of Democrats or Republicans alone. It's comprised of a handful of each on any given issue. I think if we had put together a spending bill that was a long-term spending bill for the remainder of the year, that was crafted certainly by the Republican leadership, but rather than negotiating with the more extreme voices, negotiate with the Democrats that they can work with, we'd be able to get things done. And I think the American people are expecting us to do that, and their frustration is now obviously coming to a boil.
Congressman Dent, do you agree with that sentiment that Republicans need to be the ones to reach out across the aisle in order to agree on a compromise that will fund the government longer than just a couple weeks or a month at a time?
Well, I certainly agree that what we need right now is a long-term, bipartisan, bicameral budget agreement. We absolutely need that in order to get off of this treadmill of continuing resolutions. This is a terrible thing that's happening right now. Candidly, in order to get that bipartisan budget agreement, there will also have to be an agreement on DACA and border security. And so that's really the issue now. And by the way, there is a bipartisan majority on DACA. So the question for us is, once there's that bipartisan majority in the Senate on DACA, it would have to come to the House. And then at that point, the House leadership will have to allow the bill to be voted on, even if it means that less than a majority of House Republicans would vote for it. I was against the government shutdown in 2013. I opposed what Ted Cruz had done. I was very vocal. By the same token, we shouldn't shut the government down over DACA. We need to reopen immediately and then move quickly into this negotiation on both the budget agreement and DACA border security.
We're seeing from the president, according to some of the reporting from our White House reporters, the president is saying he's not willing to negotiate at all with Democrats, Congressman Kildee, until the government is back open. And at the same time, we're hearing from some of the Democratic leaders that they're not willing to do any kind of negotiations to pass some kind of government funding bill unless the immigration issue is addressed and helping these dreamers. Where does it go from here?
Well, I think the president painting himself into a corner like that is really dangerous. And it's not, speaking for myself, and I know for many of my Democratic colleagues, we just want to have a seat at the table. If we can get a commitment, as Congressman Dent said, if we can get a commitment that we'll have a vote on the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate to deal with dreamers, that's a big step forward for us. And we could come together and essentially compromise. We don't like this budget deal. We never should have these continuing resolutions. We ought to have a budget that's a long-term budget. But there's a lot that's not in that legislation that ought to be. We're willing to accept the fact that we're not going to get everything we want. But what we can't do is continually to be promised by the White House and the leadership that there will be an effort to deal with the dreamers. And then every time we come to one of these deadlines, that promise is just forgotten. I think Congressman Dent's got it exactly right. There has to be a commitment to deal with the dreamers, but it's not just about dreamers. It's about the fact that community health centers are not funding. Yes, CHIP is funded, but the place that most of those kids in my community go to get their health care will be shuttered under this budget. So we've got to be able to deal with more than one thing at a time here.
On the chip issue, Congressman Dent, that does seem to be something that has been kicked down the road for many months. It's not at the 11th hour where this suddenly is an issue. This is an issue that came up as far back as September. Why not just put that out and take that out of the budget negotiations altogether and just put a clean CR on the floor and put a clean bill on the floor regarding chip by itself?
I can deal with it either way. Look, I'm happy to put chip in the continuing resolution to fund the government for 6 years. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with what the House passed. That said, if in order to reopen the government that we have to separate them and vote on, that's fine with me too. The point right now is the Senate must pass a bill to fund the government. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm told that they are going to simply change the date from February 16th back to February 8th. In other words, to keep it funded until the 8th rather than the 16th without any other changes. Fine, send that to us. If they have to make other changes, do that too. But I helped establish chip in the state of Pennsylvania in 1993. We're, I think, the first state to do so. And I'm very committed to it. So I'd like to get this done as quickly as possible. The CR, to me, is an appropriate vehicle, but I might not make that call at the end of the day.
So, Congressman Dent, what would be your message to your Republican colleagues in the Senate right now?
They need to reach an agreement with the Senate Democrats. And my message to them would be this. First, get the government reopened. But at the same time, make a good faith effort and commitment that we also address the long-term budget issue that we have to do for the year, the bipartisan, bicameral budget agreement. At the same time, say that they're going to sincerely allow for a vote on a bipartisan DACA border security bill that deals with family reunification and also there's another issue, too, they want to deal with. But they'll deal with all these issues, 4 issues. Let them deal with them, and I think we'll be fine. But we need that commitment. They're not going to be able to negotiate the DACA agreement, though, in the context of the CR.
So you're talking about the commitment to bring up that issue. Got it. Congressman
the fourth issue.
Go for it.
Yeah, the fourth issue had to do with the diversity visa lottery. That's it. Okay.
Gotcha. Congressman Charlie Dent and Dan Kildee, good to see both of you. Thank you very much for taking time.